Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar today on leveraging automation and AI in marketing. I'm so happy to have Wayne Stanley from Bowe Digital with us here today. My name is Amanda Farrell. I am a content marketer here at PropLogix. For those of you who may not be familiar with PropLogix, we are a title support service company providing information like municipal lien searches, HOA research, title curative help, release tracking, and lots of other services to title agents and real estate agents in the business. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at what we do as PropLogix, I encourage you all to go to our website, proplogix.com, after this presentation and check it out. But as I said today, we have Wayne Stanley with us to talk a little bit about marketing, automation, and AI, and some really exciting technology that is beginning to really transform how you engage with your potential clients and your current customers. And so we're really excited to talk about that. Before I hand things over to Wayne, I just want to let you all know that we will be answering questions throughout the presentation and I will be moderating those. So please feel free to ask if anything comes to mind, something you're not sure about, just go ahead and ask that question in your control panel and I will be sure that we get to those. I'm also going to be launching polls throughout the presentation just to get your feedback and understand a little bit more where you're at in your marketing. So before we get started, I want to go ahead and launch our first poll. And we're curious to know what your marketing team looks like. Do you currently have a dedicated marketing team member or maybe an entire department for your company? Or are you more one of those small businesses, small title companies where you're wearing multiple hats, you're doing it all, you're clearing title, you're coordinating those closings, and you're also taking care of marketing on top of that? Let us know. And I'll give you a few more seconds to answer that poll. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick look and then I will turn things over to Wayne. So 45% of you said that you currently have a dedicated marketing person or team for your company, while 55% of you say you do not. So that is good to know. All right. Oh. Sorry, guys, looks like something's going on with my screen. Okay, there we go. All right, now that we're all done with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, Wayne.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda, and thanks to PropLogix for the webinar today. They're always great, and I'm so excited to talk about this topic with everybody. I know AI and automation is definitely on a lot of people's minds right now. Today we're going to talk about it specifically in the marketing space. For those of you that I haven't met before, like Amanda said, my name is Wayne and I own Bowe Digital. We are a marketing firm. We're based in Indiana, but we work with title companies in about 40 different states at this point, and real estate attorneys, underwriters, just about everybody. And we help with a little bit of everything from the traditional side of marketing to logos and designs and PowerPoints and that kind of stuff, to everything in your digital needs with websites, blogs, social media content, automation, and podcasts like PropLogix's. We don't help with theirs, but we do a lot of podcast work these days, video, and so much more. So for that 55% of you that don't have anyone, if you want to talk at some point, we'd love to. But today, as we get into some of this with automation and AI, I think that it's a conversation that is, like most things in marketing, going to be super unique to your business and what you're prepared to do in the future. So please, like Amanda said, please use the chat. I'm a pretty casual presenter, so ask questions and things, and we'll kind of answer them as we go along here, because we want this to be a good use of your time today. So I think you can go ahead and advance to the next slide here. Just to kind of break down what we're going to go through together, I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between automation and artificial intelligence, because that's one that still has a lot of questions for folks in the industry. People still get that kind of confused and are curious as to what that really means. Then I want to show a couple of examples of how this is working in the real world. You're interacting with automation and AI and so many other things every single day, and people don't always realize it. And a lot of you are actually interacting with it in the industry. Within Title itself, you're seeing these types of applications. So we're going to go through some of those, and then I'm going to give you some real simple take-home steps to start thinking about this stuff in the future for your own business. And we've got a poll question later that'll kind of help with that, but I always try to end webinars that I'm a part of with some concrete action steps to help you think about this. Now, I always say this is never a prescription for like, this is how you move forward, or this is going to work perfectly for your company. As we know in Title especially, it's different sometimes county to county, let alone state to state, region to region, all of that. This is the same. What we're doing with automation, artificial intelligence, marketing in general, it's going to be super, it should be, very little is out of the box and cookie cutter for everyone. This is going to be personal to you. And while it might sound daunting and some of the things you're going to see will seem super technical, there are real ways that you can start with this stuff in your own organization without having to feel overwhelmed or like you need a full marketing department or that you have to outsource. There are ways to get started with this to make your life a little bit easier right from the start. So let's go ahead and dig in a little bit if we want to advance to the next one here and talk about automation versus AI. Let's talk about automation first. Did we skip one? Did I mess up? I may have there.
Sorry, you might have gotten out of order somehow. Let me
that's
just.
Fine. I'm good with the flow.
Oh yeah, artificial intelligence is first. Sorry about
that. That's fine. So for artificial intelligence, this is the one that relies on algorithms, and we've talked about algorithms a lot in the past. I think that algorithms first sort of became part of our language all the time. If you're a mathematician, if you are an engineer, that sort of thing, you've probably dealt with algorithms for a very long time. But really, that phrase, blaming it on the algorithm, all of that kind of stuff, really started to rise in our culture with the rise of social media. So that's only been happening for, roughly a little more than a decade at this point, where algorithms in that sense have been in our face. The thing that I love to talk about is that algorithms have actually been around since the Babylonian times. The first algorithm that is sort of recorded anywhere was actually on a tablet in ancient Babylonia. So while you've heard of algorithms with Facebook, they were doing multiplication algorithms way back then. And for me, when I was preparing for this, I've talked a lot about AI and automation in the past, but I hadn't really dug back into it in a little while to think about the core principles of some of this. And the one thing I was thinking about with an algorithm, as a marketer and in Title, we're full of jargon all the time. And so algorithms, sometimes I don't love being the jargony type of person. So I was trying to think of, what does that really mean when we say algorithm? And at its bare bones, an algorithm is just a simple set of instructions. It can be simple, but specific. So, and you have algorithms for just about everything in your life with that kind of definition. So again, as I'm trying to break down some of this for everybody today, don't think about it as something super technical. If you're not the size of Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, you'll never be able to handle an algorithm or something like that. That's not necessarily the case. It's just a super simple, specific set of instructions. So AI simulates human intelligence, and this is where a lot of I get this all the time, where people complain about my phone is listening to me, and I talked about these shoes last week, and now the shoes are showing up, and it's Apple and Google and Facebook and the government and just about everybody at this point is listening. And in some cases, that may very well be the case, but in a lot of times it is the power of artificial intelligence. as unique as we think we are as humans, we're really not. And so we can pull together things that make assumptions, just like we do as humans. This is where artificial intelligence simulating what we do. We can say, based on your purchase history, I can tell that you have cats, and I can tell that you are a Cubs fan, or a White Sox fan, whichever side of Chicago you might want to side with. And I can tell that you pay forward a monthly car payment every month. And so then you probably have, and if it's of a certain level, maybe it's a minivan or a truck, which means that you probably have a family. So from all of those things, you probably want products and services that are family oriented. And so if you were just talking about this slide that all the other folks at school are talking about for their kids in the summer, I can set up everything through artificial intelligence on ads and other things that we do through your marketing that will make sure that at some point you get an ad about that slide if you're doing it all correctly. This is why you don't get ads about some of the super specific stuff that you might talk about, but big things that you talk about with your group of friends or with your family that all of a sudden show up in your news feed. It's not necessarily on accident. It's somebody very purposefully putting that stuff into your life. Do I think that your Alexa is listening to you? Like mine just turned on when I said that. Probably so, regardless of whether you wanted to or not. Probably so in some way. But a lot of this stuff isn't by happenstance. It really is somebody making these decisions. And this was all true. A lot of stuff with AI and automation, people really feel like has only been in recent history or with the rise of social media and technology, and that's really not the case. We were able to do this even years ago, almost 15 plus years ago at this point, when I was working in politics. When I first graduated college, I worked for a US senator in Washington, D.C., and was doing communications work for them, and then moved on to the campaign side of life for a little while. And in those campaigns, with your public credit history, we could pull those same things that I'm talking about. I could see if you've purchased cat litter with your Visa card in the past. I could see if you were a Colts season ticket holder. I could see if you had a recurring subscription to the Indianapolis Museum of Art, and I could make assumptions based on that. And I could send you a political ad in a postcard, which is what we used to do back in the day, that would have a cat holding a Colts flag walking through the Museum of Art if I wanted to, that would feel super specific to you, and with whatever message, that whoever I wanted you to vote for, whatever issue I thought was important, I could have sent all of that to you with this public information. So we've been down this path for a long time, is the moral of the story for me. A lot of people think that it's the rise of social, and it's definitely grown in that way, but everybody making decisions in the 60s and 70s when credit cards first became a thing and all of that, that's really, if you want to shift blame somewhere, that's where we probably messed up, where we shouldn't have allowed some of that information to be in the public space. The same thing is true with certain pieces of your voting history. All of that stuff is things that you can access. And so that is why sometimes you're like, how did I get, everybody's used to the spam emails, that people just share lists and that's how you end up there. But sometimes you're wondering, how did they get my address? How did they find me in this way? There's so much. And this isn't to scare you. This isn't meant to be, we could have a symposium on your right to privacy and that sort of thing. But this isn't to be that. It's just to say that this is happening all around us, and there's a responsible way to do this. I also don't want it to seem slimy that a company like mine is helping people to do artificial intelligence and automation in their marketing. There are ways to responsibly use this information and allow people to opt out and to do good things for your business. And so three of the things that artificial intelligence really focuses on within this is learning, reasoning, and self-correction. And you'll see this in some of the examples that we pull up here in a little bit, but artificial intelligence is where people think of this and they think of, this always dates me with our interns, but I always talk about Rosie from the Jetsons, their robot nanny housekeeper that would be all around the house. We literally have interns these days that have no idea who Rosie is or the Jetsons, have never seen it. It's sort of like a knife to my heart, but people think of artificial intelligence with Rosie, or they think of it with purely Alexa, or that it's app based. And we're going to show you an industry tool and what others are doing in the industry that kind of revolve around this in a little bit. It doesn't always have to be a specific app or tool or things like that. There's a lot happening where all of this revolves around data, and your automation does too, but artificial intelligence really dives far deeper into that world than just the automation piece by itself. So next, let's go through automation. Automation can be a little bit of everything. I think if the industry is poised for one of these, automation is definitely it. We're going to get into this more in a little bit, but you know, automation is really meant to make your life easier. We'll talk more about that soon, but there are so many ways that you can automate things. It's not in the title industry, when I talk about automation, I always have somebody come up, this was pre-COVID, I would have people come up to me after presentations and say, I don't want to add automation because you're taking jobs away from my company, and I don't want to be in trouble in my community for doing that. That's not how you should look at automation. Automation is something that helps you work smarter, not harder. Automation is something that is allowing you to, instead of your most senior staff member spending their time on super mundane tasks, there may be things that they're able to automate so that the people that you are paying the most, that have the most expertise, can put that towards something that's maybe a little more productive towards your bottom line. There's a lot that you can automate, from your title production software to the various vendors and the services that you use, to your HR services, to just about anything in your business. There are pieces that you can add automation to, and we interact with automation all the time. We certainly do for artificial intelligence as well, but automation can be super simple or more complex, and it really depends on the various algorithms that you use. And again, this is where I thought it was helpful to talk about the crux, the definition, foundational aspect of an algorithm being specific instructions. If you replace this to think about automation in your company as the complexity of tasks in automation depend on the specific instructions that you're willing to tell it. So if you don't spend the time to think about this, that's really where on most things in your automation, your bigger investment up front is likely going to be time. It's going to be really thinking about what is our actual process, whether it's in your marketing, your production, your sales cycle, your onboarding, whatever it is, really spending that time to think through what's every little piece of what you do, and then where within that can you automate? Where can you provide those algorithms of specific, simple instructions to say, if this, then that? And how can you use technology in that way to help you with automation at that point? I want to stop really quick now that we've gone through those two. Are there any questions yet, Amanda?
Nope, we're good right now.
Perfect. Okay, so let's get into some examples of automation and things that are out there in the world. Email automation is probably the most apparent, the most wide-reaching for so many things. You can automate emails for just about everything at this point, and I'll get into more examples in just a second, but you can get into automation with various reporting that you're doing. A lot of your school districts, if you have children that are school age, they're doing all sorts of things with automation for reporting. In most school districts, teachers are not putting in grades and reporting in the same way that they used to. What you're doing with reporting, to your management team, to your ownership team, that sort of thing, there might be ways that you can automate within that. If you have a Google Nest thermostat in your home, you can automate your temperature control. You can automate your, if you've had a DVR or a TiVo for more than a decade, that's all pieces and parts of automation. You're saying, I won't be home, this is airing at 8 p.m., I want you to auto record this for me. There are so many different ways that you can use automation. One of them that is becoming more popular in that would affect the industry is in the document generation side of things with local municipalities. They are trying to figure out how to automate because they, in some ways, like our industry, they are losing a lot of ground in terms of talent and information retention. There are people that you likely know in these courthouses, county buildings that are aging out, they are retiring, and it is not something that, you know, as a society, we've probably done a very good job to let people know that those are careers that exist, that those jobs are out there, and while, you know, may not require a 4-year degree or something, are kind of technical and require a lot of localized knowledge. And so to get around some of this, some of the, you know, a lot of these city organizations, county organizations, one of their chief duties is document creation, documents for just about everything under the sun, whether it's permitting or who knows what. And they're rapidly trying to figure out how to automate this, because when Glinda retires and she's been at that desk for 50 years, there's nobody else that knows what Glinda knows. So they're trying to figure out how can we automate as much of that as possible, because while they're not replacing the job, they can't replace that missed information. And I think that's another place for the industry where you can think about things too. With a talent shortage in the title space, there are probably a lot of options for you in terms of document generation, the reporting, all of those sides of things that you should really be thinking about that can potentially help for where you are feeling that pinch with talent these days. Let's go forward. Thank you. Under artificial intelligence here, this is where I think one of the ones that gets talked about most in the industry for loan processing would be Rocket Mortgage. You know, however you feel about that. I know everybody is very passionate when they talk about those types of tools, but that's an example of artificial intelligence that's learning with you. One that is a giant pain in the industry is within spam filters and people thinking through, you know, your system in that way and what they learn and don't learn. It's not as simple. I think, you know, way back when spam first became a thing that people knew about, spam filters were uploading a list of, as long as I report this email, that's fine. And then it was automating things. And over time, those systems have been able to have those super specific instructions to be very clear and very quickly crawl an email to see what is good and bad and what should be in there. E-commerce for sure, virtual assistants I think is where artificial intelligence can add the most for most small businesses. You run into virtual assistants in so many other parts of your life now. If you have a chat bot on your site, we have one on our site. Whatever you may have, it allows you to talk to folks. And they're on a scale, like everything. There are a lot of different pieces of that spectrum that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but that virtual assistant piece, you see that if you're paying your Verizon bill. I mean, everybody talks about this now. You can't get anybody on the phone, not just Verizon, whatever it may be. That customer service side of what you do is really where this is being executed most frequently. And whether you love it or hate it, that is not going anywhere anytime soon. I tell folks all the time, you know, they're like, well, we want to build a new site, but we are not putting one of those chatbots on there. I hate those things. They drive me nuts. They ding the whole time I'm on the site. I understand that, but the way that virtual assistants are being utilized can really free up a lot of time and energy for various companies, and is something that I think that are going to continue to evolve for a lot of these sites moving forward. As we talk with artificial intelligence and more about algorithms in general, I told you I went on this deep dive to really, I've been talking about AI and automation for a long time, but I hadn't focused on the algorithms in a while, and I was feeling really inspired when Amanda asked me about this webinar, and so I was doing some more research, and I ran across this article that I had read years ago. And if you want to read, in the title industry, we're super nerdy, and the real estate industry in general. So if you want to read some of the nerdiest stuff ever, Google the 15 most important algorithms ever. And you can see kind of, I think one of the examples is the Babylonian example, but there's an article, I think it's from an engineering magazine, and it's really fascinating to think through algorithms that have been in our lives for a really long time. And it was a nice way. It's super nerdy, it's super down in the weeds, but even if you just skim for that list, I think that it's something that you can appreciate a little bit more when you see how it's impacted what we do. I mean, some of the things that were in there were like Boolean algebra and all kind. I mean, just stuff that I haven't thought about in years and years. But I know we have some other title nerds with us today, so I wanted to make sure I brought up that for anybody that wants to dig a little deeper on artificial intelligence, algorithms, and what it means even beyond title, but in the rest of your life here.
Since we have a better idea now, some of those examples of what is, automation, what is AI, I wanted to go ahead and launch our second poll, asking if any of you have tried any of these automation tools at your company. Have you tried it in email marketing, in chatbots, something else, or no, you haven't tried any of this at all? I'll give you all a few seconds to answer. So far, it's looking like the majority is no, and then followed by email marketing by 25%.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and do a quick share here. So yep, the majority of you have yet to done any sort of automation. And for those of you who have, it looks like the majority has been within your email marketing, which is a really smart choice, a really great way to, get in contact and stay in contact with your clients without too much work on your end. So I would say if you're going to start with automation, email is probably a good place to focus, but maybe Wayne has a different opinion on that.
I would agree, and I have two follow-up questions that I want people to use the chat box for here as we go through this. But for those of you that said chatbots or email marketing, what's the biggest headache within that for you as you work on automation in your title company? Where do you see the biggest pain point as you've tried to start using it? I know for a lot of people, it might be things like reporting. Sometimes it's service, being able to service those things. Sometimes it's content and organization. We know what we want to do. We don't know how to get there. So use the chat feature and let us know what those pain points are since you've tried it. And maybe if there aren't any, that's great. Good for you. We'll do a case study with you soon. But I'm sure some of you have something that you can add here.
I can say for us, for our chatbot, which we've tried before in the past, but then we stopped the program. It's been an issue of being able to monitor it when people need an actual live person for support. That's been one of a big pain point for us, is making sure that we have the manpower, the team power behind the chatbot for when people get frustrated and they want to talk to someone one-on-one. So maybe that's been a similar issue for some people here today. But yeah, if you have anything that you want to share, go ahead and feel free to type that into the chat bot or in the chat box.
Yeah, I keep interchanging with them now. Is anybody sharing, or are they multitasking right now?
No, nothing right now.
I figured some of them probably have it up to listen to and are deep into their email at this point. That's fine. When we talk about one of the title industry examples, that's when I want to get into more about the chatbot itself and that exact situation that you're talking about, Amanda, because I think in some cases that's an instance of making sure that you're using the right tool for your organization. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want that automation or that artificial intelligence to do for you internally, and how do you want it to serve your customers? And that's where you do have to take that time, because you will have to shut it off. You will if you're disappointing customers because you're not able to meet that need. Because I'll tell you, I'm millennial enough that in so many, I mean, I can talk about the Jetsons. I've used a disposable camera and a fax machine and all of this stuff. But I am millennial enough that if I go to an organization and they have a chatbot feature, I don't need to talk to a human. And I think I say this all the time, and this is a good point before we get into some more of these examples. I think that one of the biggest challenges for title companies in 2021 and beyond, there are certainly many. There are many challenges, I understand that. But I think the challenge and opportunity is the expectation of your customers for their closings. You have such a burden right now with a certain subset of your customer base that expects a more traditional closing experience that is maybe not as tech heavy, that is far more traditional in the interpersonal sense, that, you know, it's an hour long or more. There's this whole pomp and circumstance at your office. There's the celebration. And I know COVID has changed some of this, but there's that side of the expectation. And then the other side, you do have customers that want a more tech forward closing. They want the efficiency, they want the security to be showcased, which I know a lot of your realtors do not care about or are frustrated with. You know, they want something that is on their time, you know, whatever that looks like. And that's, I mean, that's the end of the spectrum I'm on. If I was having a closing today, I would want it to be digital whenever I wanted it to be, on my own time, paperless, and super quick. And that would be 5 stars for me. Some of your customers, if they had that sort of experience, that would be a 1-star experience. And that's hard to deal with. As a company, it's hard to serve both ends of that spectrum effectively. And this is one way that you can try to add more of that for your customers that you're trying to serve, or for your, I call them your legacy customers, the folks that still may have 5 or more years of business left to give you. So there are things within this that I think can help with that burden that a lot of title companies have right now. All right, let's go into, so this particular piece I think is interesting for a lot of people because, again, we talked about algorithms previously, specific instructions. I'm going to keep drilling that in for folks. Artificial intelligence mimicking human behavior, like listening, like being able to hear you and then start showing you ads for things. Machine learning, where it takes artificial intelligence even further. That's where, in some ways, that's where your cookies can come into play on your computer, where you're finally being asked more and more about your privacy. Machine learning was on a fast track for a long time, where everything that you touched digitally was learning about you, following you, looking at anything that you've allowed it to in the past, and following you into the future. This hit a speed bump, maybe even crashed into a wall in Europe a few years ago when they passed the GDPR, the General Data Privacy Regulation. And I was making sure my acronyms were all correct there. And that passed in Europe, and it's one of the most strict privacy regulations in the world for how companies have to deal with people's data security, data privacy, and those sorts of things. This is why over the last couple of years, you probably get more emails and app notifications than ever before letting you know that somebody has changed their terms of service. If you have seen that, that is because they likely do business in the UK or throughout Europe. What they have done over there is having a ripple effect around the world, and a lot of people are going ahead and adopting some of those privacy practices in their apps because they know, you know, eventually this is going to happen here in the States. It won't look near the same, it won't be at near the same speed, but the machine learning that's happening with a lot of these programs will change. You saw this recently, machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, the way the algorithms are used in social media. A couple of months ago, Apple launched their new operating system, and it effectively sort of hit Facebook in the knees with what they try to do with their advertising. It was kind of what we have seen in terms of Facebook advertising over the last couple of months has almost shifted. Before 2 months ago, I was telling people that if you really want your stuff to be seen, you're going to have to put a little bit of money behind it. Now, with what's changing, it's almost the flip. It's almost the exact opposite, where when we're paying to be seen, so many people have turned off that feature now where they're not allowed to be tracked. They're not allowed to have Facebook do machine learning on them. They're not allowed to follow them all over the internet. It's even harder for us now to do the paid advertising, which is great. It's great for people's budgets, but it's crazy that that one switch has really changed things in that way. And then with deep learning and going into like all of the data that's out there, I think that it's important, and in a minute we're going to talk about good data versus bad data and that sort of stuff, but I think that with any of that, you have to constantly think about the data that you have, and that's something that I'm going to challenge you about here in a minute. But you know, as we keep talking about this and as you think through this afterwards, think about what data you have as a title company and what would be helpful to you as you move forward into the future. And I don't think as an industry myself, I mean, I'm not a developer, but I don't think we're quite near machine learning and deep learning in most of what title is doing specifically. There is a lot of that starting to happen in real estate with things that Google and Realogy and just all kinds of folks are, Zillow is what I meant to say, not Google, that they're doing right now is definitely in that realm, but it's not trickling down to us quite yet, but it is coming. And so that's why this kind of stuff is important to know and have on the horizon. So this is something that Amanda and I talked a lot about when we were talking about this topic of data feeding the machine, and the quality of the data that you have really impacts the output of your learning. We have this all the time with even things as simple as email automation, where someone will give us a list and we'll come up with an automation, and we find out that actually years ago they bought that list, or the list hasn't actually been cleaned up in 10 years. And so the first 10 emails that we send are abysmal and just super chaotic with what the results are in terms of who's opening, who's unsubscribing, that sort of thing. And it's very different in our industry for sure. But I think that, you know, there's a phrase about good data versus bad data. I always add into there too, versus data at all. Because there are some folks that just, they think they don't have anything. And this is where I would really encourage folks, especially with automation, and I'm sort of cutting into one of my takeaways today, but make a note to talk to the various vendors that you have about automation opportunities and what kind of data you might need to incorporate some of that automation. Talk to your, especially your title production software companies. Just about all of them at this point offer some form of automation that can make your life easier. And a lot of times, you're already paying for it. You're paying for that option and capability, and you're not using it. That may not seem like those are things that affect your marketing, but freeing up your staff to be able to offer better service is something you can market. Adding automation that benefits your customers is something that you can market. Things that you can have real conversations about with folks are big deals in all of this. And I think that this is probably where title is a little bit behind in this effort, because we think we're super tech savvy, especially after the last year. I tell folks, I may get some hate mail for this, but over the last year, everybody in title was like, oh, we've moved forward so much. We moved forward like 5 years in technology in just 1 year because of COVID. And I do think that's true. Do I think we're at 2021 in what we've fast forwarded? Probably not. I think we're probably still like 2014-ish as a group, where there's so much that's happened in the last 7 or 8 years that we're not quite there yet. And that's not to say that no one's trying or anything like that. It hasn't been required of us. Just like your marketing in general. For most title companies, for decades, they didn't have to market. And then really this started probably with RESPA, and then all, you know, in the 70s, all the way up to now, that's changed, and you have more competition. The industry has changed so much and looks so different. It's a big deal to make these giant jumps. And a lot of times in business, you don't have to make them until it's requested of you. And now this is kind of at our door. I think that this is one that we're going to adopt as an industry far quicker than some other tech things that were happening previously, even things as simple as DocuSign and that sort of stuff. We're definitely all up to speed there now, but I think this is one that we're still a little bit behind, and the data that you have is going to inform a lot of this as we go forward. And it's something to talk to your team about and like I said, your vendors and everybody else that you use. So let's talk a little bit here about some of the benefits, and then we're going to get into some of these examples. I think that some of these benefits we've already talked about, but better customer experiences, this is one. This is a good one that I tell title companies, even if you're not going to adopt, and especially since so many of you haven't done anything with automation or AI yet, you can be, I say this all the time for your marketing, you can be a thought leader for your customers about various topics without being an expert in them yourself. And some people get that confused. You don't have to be doing automation and AI as a title company to look like a hero when you tell your local real estate agent that if they had a chatbot on their website, they may not have to answer emails as much at night because they could direct people to their local lender, to the local school district information, to whatever the top 3 things they get asked all the time. They could load that into their chatbot and they wouldn't have to worry about those emails because it would answer it for them. That's a way better experience than having to wait or then setting the expectation that that agent's going to talk to them at all hours of the night. There are things that you can definitely do within your title company for a better customer experience, but if you're not ready for this yourself, this is great stuff to know, to be a value add conversation that is RESPA compliant to your agents, to use in your sales efforts, that they can lower operating costs, that they can reduce employee time. It doesn't have to be that you adopt this necessarily, but bringing them this kind of information can be, you can really be seen as the hero here. A lot of what you do in your automation can definitely lower costs. There's definitely a cost to adding automation typically and utilizing various AI tools. But where you have that maybe initial cost of time and resources, what you're reducing in what you spend, the employee time, that sort of thing, you're going to make up for in big ways. Content is still king in terms of your marketing. So the content that you put out there is super important. This is something that PropLogix does very well. If you want a school of content in the title and real estate space, PropLogix is a great one to look at all the stuff that they put out there for this industry and for your customers. Adding more of that automation are ways that you can share that without having, again, being that thought leader, sharing information without having to create information. That's something that not only PropLogix, but your other vendors can be a really great resource for you, because a lot of them are creating content these days that you can serve to your audience. And you can set that up in various automation, and we'll show you that here in a minute. Again, we talked about previously using information to predict customer needs and to shorten a sales cycle and that sort of thing. I think that it varies for everybody, but we've talked a lot about the benefits for a while here, and I want to get into, with our 15 minutes left, some of these examples. So let's talk about real world stuff, real world automation. We get this all the time. This is a great example for me. I don't have a Nissan, but I leased a car last year, right before the start of the pandemic, and I get these sort of emails now that are saying it's time for maintenance for the vehicle. It's something that they can set up on the back end to, here's a list, and the list has various information to it. It might have the person's name in the title space. It might be that they closed on their house, the date that they, had their closing in your office, and a year later, it congratulates them on their house purchase, or happy first anniversary and it automatically inputs their address for the house. Maybe not with your MPI, as I say that out loud, but maybe not the address, but the 1-year anniversary would be a great kind of reminder type email that you can send to folks. You get these all the time. You get re-engagement emails all the time. This is a good example of the "we miss you" email. We get asked, this is built into so many tools now that you use publicly. For a lot of our folks that aren't in the title industry, like the one that I'm thinking of, we work with a flower shop and boutique, and they use Shopify for their e-commerce. And Shopify has tons of tools already built in where if somebody adds something to their cart, Shopify will automatically email them if they don't buy it within 24 hours. And it'll say, we miss you. We think these shoes would look great on you, and that sort of thing. You get that all the time. We all know the Amazon effect. Any of you that have ever bought anything from Amazon, they use re-engagement emails all the time. We miss you, we want you. Nordstrom Rack is another one that is just all over it. They will bug you until you buy that pair of shoes, that purse, that cologne, whatever it is, that weird tchotchke, whatever it is that you've looked at, you're probably going to walk away with it if it's a Nordstrom Rack, because they use re-engagement emails so often. But those are two ways that you're seeing it out in the real world. In title specifically, I want to talk about two different ways that this is happening. I think you can move on to the next slide here, Amanda. Oh, we were going to do real world first. I'm sorry. So I won't go into title yet. The real world examples for artificial intelligence are Airbnb's pricing algorithm. This map always shocks a lot of folks to see all the different sort of geofences that are set up. Speaking of jargon, if you're not familiar with a geofence, it is almost exactly what it sounds. We are simply drawing a fence around a certain geographic area to serve people advertising. The most fun geofencing that we get to do, it's died down so much, but I used to love doing geofencing for Snapchat filters. The advent of TikTok and Instagram stories has really killed Snapchat in some ways. If you have younger kids, I'm sure they're still all over Snapchat. But at some point, we could do a whole class on just geofencing and how crazy it is that, you know, if we really want to target, if you're wondering how, well, I'll give you an example. This is a real world example of what we use for one of our customers. They're a department store, and they want to target like-minded customers from other department stores. So we have geofences around Hobby Lobby and Ross and Target and TJ Maxx, and we say in that specific community, you know, we put up ads for those folks that if they walk into that geofence over TJ Maxx and they have their phone on, we can serve them an ad that says, hey, 25% off at our department store today. We can serve an ad. Our system allows us, if it's raining, we can serve an ad saying, hey, did you know we have closer parking than TJ Maxx? Hey, did you know that we offer umbrellas for our customers on days that it's raining to get from the parking lot to the store? Whatever it might be. Again, that's for some people, that's a little big brother and they don't want to know that. But the program that we use for our geofencing, for our artificial intelligence, is owned by WeatherBug. So we use a lot of stuff with weather to try to motivate people to do things. Another example of artificial intelligence is obviously Google's voice search, or Siri on your iPhone, or I can't think of the name of the Samsung version, but Bixby or something like that, something strange. But those are definitely AI examples. For a lot of folks, you know, if you haven't updated your iPhone in a while, you may not know that Siri has a vast different voice option these days. There's the traditional Siri that stays, but now the other Siri options are crazy different. Doesn't sound nearly as robotic, doesn't mispronounce nearly as much of the words that you might expect. But that voice search, this comes into your marketing in different ways, because with how heavy people are using voice search through Alexa and your iPhone and Google and all those sorts of things, it's changing the way that we have to do content. It's changing the way we have to do content on our websites. because the way that you speak when you do a voice search is usually very different than what you type into Google. Because with your voice search, you're asking super specific questions, you're way more conversational. And with Google, the average Google search term is typically 3 to 4 words. Even if you're looking for, something that might be more complicated than that, and that's just not the same. And so that's changing. And because we're changing the content, the artificial intelligence is able to grow even more to better serve you through that voice search. So that's another side piece of homework. If you haven't thought about voice search, if someone is searching your title company in Miami and they ask their phone for directions, or they ask about parking or how late you're open or those things, if you don't have those conversational answers in your website content, the artificial intelligence isn't going to be able to pick it up. It's not going to know that this is the answer I should give right now. This is what I should speak, because it's instant. It's instant when you're asking this. It might, every once in a while, Siri drives me nuts because she'll take 5 or 6 seconds to answer, but she answers and it's pretty quick. So if your site content isn't set up for that, it's something you might need to do an audit of. So now let's get into some of the title specific examples. So first is the closing timeline. This is a way that people are adopting automation. I think one of the examples are my friends over at Close Simple that have their pizza tracker for title. They are able to automate the process so that your title company, your closers probably get emails all the time from your real estate agents wanting to know, where's the file at? Has it been touched today? Are we still on track for closing? What does this mean? It's the same as when Domino's first created their tracker. You want to know, is it in the oven yet? That's really what your agents want to know. Is the order in the oven, or is somebody still like playing with the dough somewhere? Like, that's what they want to know. And this helps in such a big way. There's certainly other options. There are ways that you can probably do this in-house. Some of your title production software companies may have tools that are similar to this, but the way that this automation works is that not only does it have the timeline that kind of follows your order through the production process, it's also set up to communicate with these folks at each part of this. So, when the file's opened, it's really your real estate agent and the lender that care about that. When the closing is scheduled, it's going to kick off emails automatically to the buyer and seller, to the real estate agent, the lender, anybody that needs to be involved. That's all going to be there. The closing checklist, depending on what's in your system for that order, it may already have information in there of what's still needed. It may have information of, hey, we've got everything. We'll see you on this day. That's got wire instructions. Whatever it may be, you can automate all of that so that it's not your team pushing that stuff out. I'm telling you, if you still have somebody in your office that is manually emailing even the 5 things that are on our screen right now, automate it. Talk to your title production software company today. Ask them what the options are. I guarantee you there's some way to do this easier. Work smarter, not harder. Use the automation that's available to you, and then talk about it. That's the other thing as you start adopting automation and AI and that sort of stuff. On the marketing side, you got to let people know. They won't appreciate it if you don't let them know. It's just like, in a relationship that you might have. Sometimes if they don't know you've done something, they won't recognize it. You got to tell somebody. And that way you can grow and see more success from your marketing in that way. Let's move on to the next one here. So AI in the industry, this is one that fascinates me, partially for some of what Amanda was talking about with chatbots and that sort of stuff. But one of the ones that we have here is with Alana. Alana is a smart artificial intelligence chatbot for the industry specifically that really follows your title production timeline. It learns with your customers. It learns what's happening. I think this is what you're going to start seeing a lot more. I think you're going to see things even in the underwriting space that uses artificial intelligence to answer your questions, to talk about closings and meetings and who knows what. I think this is an answer to a lot of staffing issues in the future. But these types of apps are, when we talk about the benefits, they're great for the customer experience. When we talk about implementation, this stuff takes time. Implementing a tool like Alana, can take a lot of time to really, it doesn't have to, but to purposefully think about, okay, we want this app to talk to our customers and answer super specific questions about super specific transactions. It's not something you're going to turn on overnight. You've really got to think about, from soup to nuts, what does our transaction hit? And then from there, once you've got all of that built, the minute you answer those questions and somebody starts building your tools like this, then you have to move into, how are we going to make people care about it? This is sort of, the Field of Dreams is back in the news again because of Major League Baseball hosting a game there recently. And just because you build it doesn't mean people are going to use it. Like I said, you have a whole set of your customers that think that this stuff is way crazier than Rosie and anything happening at the Jetsons. They think that this is, they don't want to touch it, they don't trust it, they don't understand it. They've always been able to email Sheila or Tim or whoever on your team. That's what they want to do. And others would take this with open arms. So this is the kind of stuff, as you're focused on new customers, this is the kind of thing that you really want to start thinking through. Maybe it's not something you're going to do in 2021. Maybe it's a goal that by the end of 2022, you want to implement something like this in your business. You can, and it's possible, but just think through. I have people every single day that come to Bowe Digital and ask, what can you do to help us with artificial intelligence? And my first question is, what are you automating right now? Because if you haven't started with automation, you're nowhere near ready for artificial intelligence. And then we talk through, I ask questions like, I go to your front office staff and I say, what are the 5 most annoying questions that you get? They're always able to answer me. Whatever that question is, it means we're not answering it well enough in everything else that we do. And those are great things that you can put into that chatbot. Those are things that you can say. If somebody says, if parking at one of your office locations is really tricky, have it automatically answerable in your chatbot, so that if somebody says parking at the Olive Street location, the chatbot will automatically say, we know it's super tricky there. Luckily, we validate, and there's a hidden garage in the alley across the street. Those kinds of things just add to that customer experience and are ways that you can use automation right away. And AI is probably a little bit more in your future, but depending on what you're doing, AI may be a little closer than what we think, but pay attention to this kind of stuff. Let's get into your 3 big takeaways here for me. 3 ideas to start now, at least. The first one here is start collecting data. A lot of title agents, like I said, don't always know that they're collecting data, that they have this treasure trove of data in your title production software. Some really freak out when I say this, thinking that I'm talking about NPI and things that are going to get you in trouble with your regulators. I don't want you to do anything that is not available to do through RESPA, CFPB, all that kind of stuff. But start thinking about, there are some title companies they'll contact me and say, we want to start doing automatic text messaging. I'll say, great, do you have a list of text numbers for your clients? Oh, no, we don't. Well, that's the kind of stuff you got to start building. That's what I mean by the data. I don't mean social security numbers and blood types and that kind of thing. I mean thinking through what you're going to want. And this goes into step 2 here, which is that I really want you to think about opportunities to communicate. That's really where you can add automation and move into artificial intelligence, is probably through your communication, through most of what you're doing as the title company externally, which is what we're talking about today with your marketing. Identify where you can communicate, and then with step 3 here, think about what you're going to say. What do you want to say to these people? Like I said, I go to those front office folks and I say, what's happening? What's the most annoying question that you get? I'll go to your closers and say, what are the top 3 reasons orders have been delayed in the last month? They always have a reason. Oh, they changed this and this form's been messed up, or this regulatory thing nobody knows about, and so it messes things up. All of that are things that you can communicate and automate to try to avoid that in the future. So keep that in mind too as you kind of move forward in all of this, for sure. But those are my 3 things. Collect the data, find opportunities to communicate, and then determine what you want to say. Again, I know that that's not a specific prescription like we talked about, but it's definitely, I think, a good step forward, especially since so many of you in this call aren't doing anything with this right now. I'm happy to talk more with those of you that have dabbled in the chat bots and email and that sort of thing. My information will be here at the end, but I know we're almost out of time. I wanted to make sure we got as many examples and illustrations in there as we could for you. But do we have any questions, Amanda?
Yeah, no questions right now. Again, I just want to encourage everyone, now is the time to ask those last minute questions. We've got one more poll. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. We've got a minute left. So now that you have a better idea of what sort of tools and ways that you can implement automation and AI into your marketing, do you think you're going to start looking to add it soon, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or are you on the never train? Is this something that you're just totally opposed to and you're just hanging out here for fun, I guess? I'm not sure, but go ahead, take a few seconds. Oh, we've got a question here from Amy that we can go ahead and answer while people finish up adding their take on the poll. So she's asking, what does a title agent contact to implement AI, or who does a title agent contact to implement AI? The software provider, Bowe Digital?
Um, uh, it depends on what you want to do. I think that if you're just interested in AI in general, I'm happy to have that conversation with you. That's stuff that we can definitely point you in the right direction of other folks. We're not a development team, so we don't develop every single day, but we can definitely, once I know a little bit more about what your goals are, then we can point you in the right direction of who's best to help you. Again, like I said, the example in here today, if you want a really great example, Alana is certainly a good one of AI that's being used in the industry, but there are several others too, and I'm happy to even send that to Amanda so that we've got a list that when we send around the recording and that thing, we can provide to you guys.
Yeah, and I know a lot of those answers depend on, what tools you're currently using, which production software is compatible with which kind of
Right.
AI robot. So that's something to consider as well. And I did want to just share with everyone real quick. It looks like 43% of you are looking to add it soon. So, we
Great.
will be sending out a follow-up email and links to Wayne's contact information. So if you have questions for him, please feel free to reach out to him via email or phone or head over to their website, bowedigital.com. And then 36% of you said 1 to 3 years, 21% 3 to 5 years, and nobody said never. So that's really great. That's
Wow.
awesome. And Jasmine's asking, this is our last question, so we'll just go ahead and try to address it. I'm not really quite sure which platform she's referring to, so maybe she can start typing in which platform she meant, but will there be automation feature to do soon on the platform? Oh, on ProperSign. I guess it depends, honestly, which features you're referring to, Jasmine. We're constantly creating new iterations of UI, and we'll actually be, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to deliver any false hopes, because our developers are working diligently on some UI improvements and workflow improvements. So if you have any specific questions, Jasmine, I would definitely say reach out to Wyatt Long. That's Wyatt Long at propersign.com, and I can actually email you separately to get with you on that. So if anyone else has any other questions or anything else that they are interested in knowing, just be sure to reach out to Wayne later via email or via phone. I've got his information up there, bowedigital.com, Wayne at bowedigital.com. You can email him at. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Wayne, I just want to say thank you so much for spending this time with us today and giving us some really great actionable item lists that we can take away and start implementing today, next week, in the next month, hopefully in the next year. And for those of you who have attended, we will be sending out a video recording that you can share with your colleagues. So if there's anything of particular interest that we discussed in this video, please be sure to share that with them. Wayne, thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, guys.